How we doing? So, I hear today is a holiday associated with green, but there's also sort of a month-long holiday happening this month. Does anybody know what that is? Alice is with it. Alice has got it. Women's History Month, right? Yeah, okay. So, how about anybody younger, anybody younger than Alice? I'm going to go with, for those who don't know, we love Alice, and Alice just turned 98. Yeah. So we're going to start with at one end of the spectrum. How about any of our youth or kids in the room? What does Women's History Month mean? Charlotte's got me back here. What's up? I don't know that I can repeat all that back. She said it is a month where we remember and learn about important women and inventors and creators and teachers, and there was a long list of wonderful attributes there, right? Yeah, cool, perfect. Okay, so I have a story to tell today, obviously, but I want to start by asking, can anybody name some important women Unitarian Universalists? Whoa, Alice has got me again. All right. Clara Barton. Great. What did Clara Barton do? What did she do? Yep. She's one of the founders of the Red Cross. Yep. Perfect. Alice Link. I'm with it. Great. Okay. Anybody else got some women and female UUs?
Julia Ward Howe.
Julia Ward Howe. And what did Julia Ward Howe do? She wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic along with other things. Cool. All right. We got some more. Louisa May Alcott. What did she do? She wrote Little Women. Awesome. Anyone else? Sophia Foz. And for those of you who weren't here last week, we learned about Sophia Foz last week. What did Sophia Foz do? Somebody want to help Samantha out? What did Sophia Foz do? She was a religious educator. Great. Perfect. Okay. One more? Anybody got one more for me? I've got it in like 6 places. Viola Liuzzo. Awesome. Was murdered after the Selma marches for her participation in those important civil rights moments. Awesome. Okay. Anybody know who Maria Cook is? I'm enjoying doing this, have you noticed? Okay. So I'm going to add one to your list for next year when this event comes around, right? Maria Cook was born in 1779. That was a long time ago, yeah? Anybody quick at math want to tell me how long ago that was? Very, very, very long time ago. Great. Good math. Okay. So 1779, she was born here in the U.S., except that the U.S. wasn't actually the U.S. yet, because that was during the American Revolution. So the Americans were fighting against the British to be their own country. And it wasn't the American Revolution was won when she was just 4 years old. And then when Maria Cook turned around when she turned 8, that's when the Constitution of the U.S. was written. And one of the things that the Constitution says is that it guarantees that people have the right to choose their religion, right? That they have the right to worship as they see fit. And it also gives them freedom of speech to talk about that religion, among other things, right? And so that was the world that was the brand new world that Maria Cook was raised in. And when Maria Cook was raised and grew up and she got to choose her religion, and she chose universalism. And she took really to heart the fact that that meant that she got to choose her faith, and it meant she got to talk about it. And so she got to talking. And she talked a lot. And she talked to anybody who would listen. She would talk in schools. She would talk at the marketplace. She would talk out at the Times Square or at the town meeting. She would talk about universalism and the fact that universalism preached an all-loving God, that God loved everyone, no exceptions. Nobody was too far away from love. And she kept talking, and eventually all of that talking landed her up at a place that looks a lot like this. It was a pulpit. And she started preaching about universalism and an all-loving God. And you might think that sounds like a logical progression in her story, but do you remember what era we're in here? We're in maybe we're at 1820? No, we're not even there yet. We're at 1805 now, right? Women were not allowed to preach. When you see me up in the pulpit, that was not a thing that could happen back then. It was a place that was reserved only for men. And so when Maria Cook got up in the pulpit, that was a really big deal. And then not only was she talking, but there were other people talking, and they were talking about her. And they weren't saying great things. But you know what? Maria didn't care. She knew that God loved her. She believed in her universalism, and she believed that she was called to preach. So she kept preaching, and she kept talking. And in 1811, she was the first woman to be given a letter of fellowship from the Universalists. She was 32 years old. And so I like to think she was a little emboldened by that fact. She was ready to go, so she kept talking even louder and even more. But remember the fact where there were people who were talking who didn't like what she had to say? Or rather, the fact that she was the one saying it? So she was actually arrested just 3 years after she was given her letter of fellowship for preaching and talking in public. She was arrested, and she sort of knew what was coming, right? She sort of heard those rumors going around. And so when the police showed up to arrest her, she didn't fight back. She didn't even argue with them. But she refused to walk. She just stood there. Said, "You can arrest me, but I'm going to make you work for it." And she stood there and refused to move, and so eventually they had to pick her up and take her to jail. And then she also wouldn't move from jail. She just sort of refused to walk for quite a while there. And when they took her into court and stood her before the judge, she said, "Judge, I have broken no laws," which was true. She hadn't broken the laws. She was merely expressing what the rights she had been given in the Constitution, right? To choose her faith, to choose her religion, and her right to free speech. She told the judge that he had no right to judge her, that he had no authority over her. That didn't go over very well, just for reference. So he threw her back in jail. And again, she refused to walk from the courtroom to jail, so they had to pick her up and carry her. But you know what? What did Maria Cook like to do? Talk. Do you think she let being in jail stop her from talking? No. So she kept talking in jail. She kept preaching about universalism to everyone else who was in jail too. And so her ministry and her preaching continued no matter where she was. And eventually, after a couple of weeks, I think the judge just got annoyed. I don't think he could decide what to do with her. Because you know what? She was right. She hadn't broken any laws. She was living out her rights as had been given to her by this new country. So he let her go. And she kept preaching. And she kept preaching, and she kept spreading the word of universalism in America, and is responsible for the conversion of thousands, probably, of folks to universalism. So who is Maria Cook? She's what? An evangelist for what? Universalism. Awesome. And the first fellowship minister, the first female fellowship minister in the Universalist tradition. Thanks.